Hello everyone, welcome to the first installment of our brand new audio production series known as Solid State Gamers Channel R, which is a faux radio station sort of program where we feature all video game music all the time. I'm your host, Jon Rivera, host of the Solid State Romcast, as well as lead reviewer and writer for the site proper. So yeah, welcome to Channel R, the first episode. It's amazing that I finally have the opportunity to get this show off the ground. I've been wanting to do this ever since I first established the Solid State Gamer back in 2007, but I've been so busy with other stuff happening with the website in terms of video updates. I've been doing a lot of preparation for some heavy video coverage on the site, as well as doing the cutting and editing of the Solid State Romcast, which is a long, intense process that you need not be bothered with the details for. But needless to say, it's great to have this first episode. So let me just make it clear. This is not a podcast or a program where I'm just going to be playing the most popular video game music tracks of old, like Final Fantasy, Bionic Commando, Mega Man. You will find some of those on the program, but it's not just a celebration of what most people consider to be classic. If it's a video game music track that came out on a game, prototype, canceled, released, no matter what the platform is, preferably retro, that's kind of what I'm going for, anything is pretty much fair game. So enough about all that. Let's dive right in. So for today's episode, we've got a pretty eclectic lineup of tracks for you guys to listen to. Kicking things off, we're going Sega 32X with the exclusive classic Shadow Squadron, released in 1994, made by Sega and the anime production company Artmic, responsible for classics like Golf Force and Bubblegum Crisis. Now, this game is incredible. It's a diamond in the rough as far as I'm concerned because it manages to pull off what Star Fox couldn't, a 3D spaceflight combat sim that was free roaming, and in terms of the quality of this title, including its music, it can comfortably sit next to classics like Elite and the Wing Commander franchise, as well as the Privateer series, and say, hey, I can do what you guys can do just as well. So we're going to be taking a look at the Mission 4 track in particular, because I think it's the finest track in the entire ensemble of music for this game. Not to say the other tracks are not as important, but this one is longer, and it features a lot more in terms of its melodic tones. Switching gears from that, we're going PlayStation 1 with the seminal classic Jumping Flash, the first-person shooter/platformer that managed to do what Mirror's Edge would eventually make popular in 2008. So jumping ship from the original Sony PlayStation, we're actually going to hop onto some arcade action with the Sega classic Galaxy Force 2, made in 1988. This particular track is the first that you hear when you dive right into the first stage. It's called Beyond the Galaxy, and it's got a jazzy flair that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. After that, we've got a track from Space Harrier 2 for the Sega Mega Drive, known to us North Americans as the Genesis. This early launch title features pretty incredible music, but the stage music that we're going to be listening to is the bonus stage track known as Winner's Flight. But enough talk from me. Let's dive right in. This is Mission 4 from Shadow Squadron for the Sega 32X by Sega. So that was the Mission 4 track from the Sega 32X exclusive Shadow Squadron, made by Sega in-house in association with ArtMix Studios. A woefully underrated gem of a game as far as I'm concerned. It managed to do what Star Fox couldn't, and that's a bold statement, but it is in fact true. It's such an amazing experience, I cannot recommend it enough, and it's not terribly expensive of a game, so definitely try to look for that online. Anyway, jumping off from the Sega 32X, we are hopping onto the Sony PlayStation with a track from the game Jumping Flash, a landmark piece of software that was both a first-person shooter as well as a platformer, and actually executed the concept quite well. Originally intended to be a mascot for the system, Robert would eventually, unfortunately and sadly, dip down into obscurity, covered up by the pageantry that was Crash Bandicoot at the time. Such an unfortunate turn of events is because Jumping Flash was actually an incredible gaming experience, but I think the fact that it was a cutesy first-person shooter slash platformer meant that it wasn't going to garner the same commercial success that games like Doom and Duke Nukem 3D were garnering at that same time. But it's still an incredible piece of software. I highly recommend it as well. So, without further ado, this is the World 6-1 track from Jumping Flash for the original Sony PlayStation. Robert, jump and go. That, my friends, was the World 6-1 theme from the seminal PlayStation classic Jumping Flash, made by Sony Computer Entertainment in association with Ultra and Exact, released for the system as early as 1995. Such a delightfully and refreshingly upbeat game. I love it to death. I mean, it's just such an adorable piece of software. Anyway, jumping from the PlayStation, no pun intended, we're moving over to the arcade with the classic Sega shooter Galaxy Force 2. Such an interesting experience with its use of sprites that are scaled in such a crazy succession to rot a 3D sort of experience. And the track that we're going to be taking a look at is the first stage track, known as Beyond the Galaxy. Enjoy. And that song was Beyond the Galaxy for Galaxy Force 2, made by Sega in the year of 1988 for the arcade. A fantastic pseudo 3D shooter. We're still going to keep things a little Sega focused as we cross platforms from the arcade to the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis, as we listen to the bonus track called Winter's Flight for Space Harrier 2 on that platform. Originally an early generation title, this game is kind of divisive, as most people either love it or hate it. Most people who hate it say that it's not comparable to the arcade classic, the original Space Harrier, but that was using more advanced technology. They were working with what they had with the Genesis, and they managed to make a game that was still pretty entertaining, and the music's pretty solid as well. So, enough about that. Here's Winter's Flight for Space Harrier 2 for the Sega Genesis. That was the bonus theme song from Space Harrier 2 for the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive. Again, a very divisive game. You either love it or you hate it. I'm in the camp that loves it. I don't think it's as good as its original predecessor, but it's still a pretty enjoyable experience to say the least. I give it a recommendation. Anyway, moving on from that, we've got tracks for the MSX2, MS-DOS, the NES, another track for the Sega Genesis. So for the MSX camp, we've got Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, the epic theme song for Solid Snake himself, known as Zanzibar Breeze. It is an incredible piece of music, let me tell you. After that, we've got the title theme from One Must Fall 2097, one of the most iconic title songs of all time. You ask anybody who played games on PC during the early 90s, during the days of Apogee Software and Epic Mega Games, yes, that's what they were called before switching to just Mega Games, they will tell you that beside the theme songs for Raptor and maybe Jazz Jackrabbit, even Commander Keen and Wolfenstein 3D, that One Must Fall 2097's title theme is incredible, and it's very memorable. So, moving on from that, we're going to be taking a look at Blaster Master for the NES, and we're going to be listening to Area 1 stage music. It's a great exposition to an otherwise incredible adventure game, with some shooting elements as well. We're going to jump from the NES back to the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis with a look at Red Zone. And this track is one of the tracks that plays when you are on the ground as an infantry soldier. And it's actually a pretty solid piece of music, considering the limitations of the sound hardware that the Genesis had under the hood. It definitely pushes that chip to its limits. and I think you'll know what I mean when you hear it. But until then, let's settle in with Solid Snake with Metal Gear 2's Zanzibar Breeze. So that was Zanzibar Breeze, the expository mission theme from Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, exclusively for the MSX2. It's unfortunate that us North Americans didn't really get a chance to properly enjoy this game in some commercial form until 10 plus years later when it got re-released with another Metal Gear game, but hey, I guess it's better late than never, huh? Anyway, we're switching gears from MSX2 over to MS-DOS. I have a lot of fond memories playing games on DOS. All the Apogee classics, as well as all of the Epic Mega Game classic games, which composed of games like Jazz Jackrabbit and the game that we're going to be listening to the title theme of for today, One Must Fall 2097, a fighting game released through that company, and it is a doozy of a game. There is so much feature set and content to the game, it's ridiculous. It's not just a single-player campaign mode, a one-on-one versus mode. It's also got a huge, lengthy career mode where you participate in various tournaments. You create your own pilot with your own persona. You can upgrade your robot, upgrade your piloting skills for that particular character. It's pretty incredible. And it's got this sort of anime-style theme, like this mecha theme, like you'd find with the Mobile Suit Gundam series. Actually, it's a lot like G Gundam when you think about it, the tournament format of the game. But enough about that. This is the title theme from One Must Fall 2097. So there you go, guys. The title theme from the epic Mega Games release for DOS known as One Must Fall 2097. It was a pretty incredible song, right? So, moving on from MS-DOS, we're actually going to jump over to the NES with some Sunsoft action. Specifically, we're going to be listening to the Area 1 theme for Blaster Master. It's a hell of a lot of fun to play, and it's an interesting marriage of run-and-gun mechanics as well as adventure gaming mechanics. So, hope you guys enjoy. This track is Area 1. So that was the Area 1 theme from the Sunsoft NES smash hit Blaster Master. That's a pretty great way to start things off for a video game. And admittedly, Sunsoft had so much experience with the NES sound hardware that they could do pretty much anything they wanted to with it. There's another game that they made called Journey to Silius, and even their licensed games like Gremlins and Batman have incredible soundtracks. But that's for another day, of course. Anyway, moving on from the NES, we're actually going to go back to the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis, playing a track from the game Red Zone, known by its prototype name as Hardwired. This particular track, like I mentioned before, is an infantry track when you're infiltrating an enemy base, and it is called Floating Data Run. Hope you guys enjoy. So that was Floating Data Run from the game Red Zone for the Sega Genesis, made by Xerox in the year 1994 for the system. At the last leg, actually, it's probably one of the reasons why it did not sell particularly well. It's kind of a rare game, and admittedly, it scored pretty low with the critics. The critics weren't so hot on the on-the-ground action with the infantry soldiers and stuff, and it's unfortunate because that's where you see a lot of the technological achievements at play. Stuff like 3D mapping as well as parallax scrolling. It's actually a pretty impressive technical achievement, and the music is also an impressive achievement for that game. But anyway, on with the rest of the show. So after that, we are actually going to jump onto MS-DOS once again to play the song NG Loop, which plays in the Belly of the Beast level in Fractalian Space for the 1993 classic Mega Race, the car combat / racing game, which is more car combat than it is racing. I mean, it's pretty much Defender or Galaxian in a racing game format with FMV tracks or FMV videos as the racing tracks. It's a very strange beast, but the soundtrack is particularly incredible. And NG Loop is no exception. So we're going to transition from MS-DOS over to the N64 to play a song from Hybrid Heaven, the genre-bending experience made by Konami. This is an interesting title that mixes RPG action with some adventure elements, mixed with a little Street Fighter, Tekken, or Virtua Fighter. Don't understand what I mean? Look the game up. It's actually a pretty interesting title. It was very ambitious for the time, and there is a rumor circulating around the internet that it was supposed to be the original version of Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. Yeah, of all things. Anyway, after Hybrid Heaven's Fight Creature Battle, we're actually going to move on to the Nintendo Game Boy with one of the better games on the platform, Metroid 2: The Return of Samus. And specifically, we're going to be playing the first area track when you get into the game. It is called Surface of SR388. After that, we're going to go back to the Mega Drive for some custom Mega Driver action with Alien Soldier, specifically the options and customization screen for the game, which has a track that plays called Slap Up. It's got a lot of bass action in it. It's pretty awesome. Lastly, we're going to close it out with an Atari Jaguar game music track from Tempest 2000, one of the coolest arcade-style games ever. It's a game with a lot of style, and the music complements this in spades. The track we're going to be listening to specifically is The Mind's Eye. So, anyway, enough of that. Let's go on to Mega Race. Get your breath back, baby, because you're going to need it. Few have escaped the belly of the beast. That, my friends, was NG Loop for the MS-DOS Classic Mega Race. Hope you guys enjoyed that. It's definitely one of the more interesting sides of DOS music. And crossing over from that, we're going to listen into Fight Creature Battle from Hybrid Heaven for the N64. That was Fight Creature Battle from Hybrid Heaven on the N64. An interesting exclusive and a pretty intense piece of music right there. Anyway, we're going to jump ship from the N64 and move on to the Nintendo Game Boy with a game known as Metroid 2: The Return of Samus. This track plays at the first mission area known as the surface of SR-388. So that was The Surface of SR-388 from Metroid 2 The Return of Samus, exclusively for the Nintendo Game Boy. A classic tune to be sure. Switching gears from the Game Boy, we're going to be moving back again to the Sega Genesis for some Alien Soldier, with the theme known as Slap Up that plays during the options menu. It's a bass-heavy melody, and I think you guys are really going to dig it. So that was Slap Up, the option theme from Alien Soldier for the Sega Mega Drive. I mean, everybody needs a little slap bass in their life, am I right? Anyway, we're closing this show out with a track from the Atari Jaguar hit, Tempest 2000. The track's title, The Mind's Eye.
Fire. Fire.
So that was The Mind's Eye from the Atari Jaguar game Tempest 2000. And with that pretty much concludes this first episode of Solid State Gamer Presents Channel R. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm hoping you guys had as much fun listening to these video game music tracks as I did presenting them. As for the future of the series, it's hard to say how frequent I'll be able to make more of these episodes, but I'll do my best. I had a lot of fun making this show, so I hope to do more in the future. And speaking about the future, if you guys have any future special requests on songs from certain games that you want played on the Channel R, be sure to comment below when I post this article on the Solid State Gamer website proper. And if you want to drop me a line at solidstateromcast@gmail.com, you are more than welcome to do that too. Anyway, this is Jon Rivera from the Solid State Gamer Channel R signing off saying thank you guys for listening, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time.
We'll be right back.